Here's one you can get as offended about as you like, and I know Bob Tuscan will love this part of the presentation. The AIDS hoax. This is another thing. AIDS doesn't exist, ladies and gentlemen. There's no such thing as AIDS. Okay? AIDS is a disease that is caused by lifestyle and malnutrition. Okay? HIV doesn't cause AIDS. There is no HIV test. There is simply an antibody test for HIV, which which over 60 different independent diseases can cause a positive result on an HIV test. Okay? Luc Montagnier, the co-discoverer of HIV with Robert Gallo, has publicly stated that he himself no longer believes HIV causes AIDS, and that AIDS can be cured with nutrition. AIDS was used primarily as an eugenics scare tactic. Again, it's fear. Get people afraid of normal sexual interaction. Okay? That's what dominates the mindset in particularly Western culture when it comes to sexual interaction, is fear, 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 and more fear. The AIDS hoax was an eugenics scare tactic to make people fearful of having sex, because this is a sexually transmitted disease that you can actually die from. Okay? I have never met an individual in my life with so-called AIDS. Not one. Zero. As a matter of fact, I have never met a person who knows a person with AIDS. And I might today. You might tell me you know somebody who had it. But this is a disease that is brought on by lifestyle and nutrition issues. Okay? That's what causes the body to go into autoimmune response and attack itself. Okay? It is not caused by HIV. People have to get that through their head and start understanding HIV is not the cause of AIDS, and it is not really, truly a, quote, sexually transmitted disease. Yeah, thank you. I knew you'd like that, Bob. I had to throw that in. Yeah. See, abstinence always slows down a population. It always slows down population rates for eugenicists who are seeking to keep the population small and manageable. So you want to encourage abstinence as much as possible. You want to have an atmosphere of fear regarding sexuality and propagate that fear as much as possible. You want to propagate what we talked about yesterday, slut shaming. You want to propagate a puritanical view of sex. Okay? One thing you don't want is normal attitudes about human sexuality and normal familial bonding between strong men and strong women. You don't want that. They don't want that. Because that's what makes a population strong and independently thinking and freedom-oriented in their mindset. You don't want that if you're a eugenicist social engineer that wants slavery. You want to breed your cattle the way you need them to be bred. And here is the testing grounds for the farmers. The testing ground for the human farmers is the nation of Japan. And let me tell you something. Everything they're doing there is coming here. It's already well underway here. Okay? They have culled the Japanese population already. And you know, we could talk about Fukushima doing that even further, and what the havoc it's going to wreak on sexual reproduction in Japan. All right? And that's no accident. It's no accident. You know, what happens in consciousness gets reflected on the grand scale when it comes to cataclysmic destruction in human lives and in the environment as well, because consciousness is directly related to those eventualities. The Japanese intimacy crisis, if you haven't heard about this, I suggest you get online and start researching it immediately. Japan is experiencing what is being called, in their own media, in their own mainstream media, they had to acknowledge it because that's how bad the problem is, an epidemic intimacy crisis. And Japan has the fastest declining population rate in the entire world. Almost half the population of Japan claims that it is no longer interested in any kind of sexual intimacy. Let me just repeat that. Half of the population of human beings that live in the nation of Japan say that they are no longer interested at all in any kind of human sexual interaction. Okay? That's what the social engineers have accomplished. They're techno-sorcerers, ladies and gentlemen. That's what these social engineers are. They are techno-sorcerers. I want to get back to that point after I finish reading the stats on this slide, because I want to make a point regarding what's really going on in Japan, and it's starting to go on here. This is happening because of destroyed sex drives in both genders due to extremely low testosterone levels, which I talked about the importance of testosterone for normal vitality, strength, and human sexuality yesterday. Japan is merely the social engineers' testing ground for their depopulation agenda. The American intimacy crisis has already begun. It is already well underway, folks. It's just unspoken. Not many people will have the courage, like myself, to stand up here and talk about these issues because they don't want to be alienated from other people who they're afraid of what they think. Now, I don't care what you think of me. I'm telling you what's going on and what I know is directly being directed by the people who I used to work with and for. I'm telling you, they told me that they were conducting these eugenics agendas. And I didn't believe it coming out of their mouth. And I'm no longer laughing about it, folks. I'm no longer saying, oh, no, you can't possibly do that to a whole population. You're not that powerful. They're getting it done. And these statistics will prove it. See, the American intimacy crisis is happening now, and our population is starting to plummet just like Japan's is. It's just unspoken, and it's not going to make the controlled headline news because they're not going to tell you what I'm telling you. Here's the statistics of the Japanese intimacy crisis. Half the population aged 16 to 49 had no sex in the past month. 27%, almost 30% of men have claimed, 1 in 3 men almost claim they're not interested in sex anymore ever again. Almost a quarter of women, when polled, they're not interested in sex anymore ever again. 1 in 4 females, no interest in sexual activity. 61% of men age 18 to 34, not in any kind of a relationship, any kind of a romantic relationship with anyone of either gender. Half of women, 18 to 34, not in any kind of a romantic relationship with either gender. 36% of men in that same age group, 18 to 34, are still virgins, have never had sex. 39%, 40% almost of women, age 18 to 34 in the nation of Japan, still virgins, never had sex once, 18 to 34. Now, you look at all those statistics together and you tell me that that's a naturally occurring trend, you're out of your goddamn mind. You tell me that that's not psychological illness, you're out of your goddamn mind. You tell me that's not physiological illness, you're out of your goddamn mind. You tell me that's not social engineering, you're out of your goddamn mind. That's human farming. Human farming is what that is. Get as offended about that as you like. That's what's going on. People should be enraged about something like that, about their ability to cull human population numbers like that. You should be enraged about it because it's coming here now. The rise of asexualism. Asexuals are people who do not experience any sexual attraction to anyone else. Asexualism is characterized by a total disinterest in all sexual behavior. And that's what the human farmers are breeding in Japan and are going to start breeding here in the United States. They've already well begun this. Contrary to the claim that asexuality is not a physical and or psychological disorder, that is precisely what it is. This is not a naturally occurring thing in the human genome or in the human population. This is something that is brought about by absolutely demolished testosterone levels in both genders, and it is brought about by mind control social engineering regarding attitudes about human sexuality. Okay? I liken this. How many people have ever researched the people who think that their limbs don't belong to them and want to remove their limbs? Okay? This is one of the most disturbing things you will ever research. Look up like the phantom limb syndrome or something, and I don't mean like people who have had limbs amputated and think that they're still there. There are people who think, my arm doesn't belong to me. My leg doesn't belong to me. I need to get rid of it to feel comfortable in my own skin. Okay? This is an issue. It's a psychological issue going on in the brain that is a profound imbalance in the being, in their psychological makeup, okay? And it's not a normal thing. It's a psychological illness. It's a disorder. You know, these people, you know, I'm not saying they're committing any violence or anything like that against anybody or should be discriminated against. But don't try to tell me this isn't a disorder. This is an illness. It's not normal. To look at it as normalcy, it's like you're looking at someone who's affected with profound cancer as you're just normal. You're not sick. It's an illness, folks. Let's call it what it is. Okay? And it's an example of what social engineering and low testosterone levels in men and women will result in. And it's rising by the day. The sexodus is a term used to describe a movement in which men, largely young men, who have recognized the ubiquitous unacceptable behavior of the conditioned female are, quote-unquote, giving up on women altogether and no longer pursuing any type of relationship with them, romantic or otherwise. I see the so-called sexodus as a reactionary stopgap and a short-term defensive mechanism that are employed by men who realize that there's a profound problem at hand between the genders, but they only recognize the symptoms of that gender war at a skin-deep level. And so they're reacting to the symptoms, okay? They have not yet penetrated to the root causal factors that underlie the condition, which is, of course, rampant social engineering that is utilized by the control class. Almost always, when I look up on, let's say, MRA forums or MGTOW forums, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, or type in the term sexodus and see what people, particularly men, are saying about it, almost zero of these people ever mention the term social engineering or mind control. Almost zero. It's negligibly talked about, if ever at all, because these people are unaware that a dark priest class that holds occult knowledge about the human psyche is absolutely wreaking havoc on the human population who don't know a goddamn thing about themselves. And it's a piece of cake for them to do. It's like a chess master playing an absolute novice who's never looked at a chessboard. They're going to get their ass kicked hard because they don't have the knowledge to combat these psychopaths who have it. The playing field is not even close to being leveled. It's completely skewed and imbalanced, and people aren't even trying to build their way up in the knowledge of themselves to combat these absolute control freaks who are doing this. And they told me they were doing this to a point where I wanted to murder the people in the room who were telling me this to my face. That's how enraged I would get. And I knew if I did anything physical to them that I'd be killed. So I had to shut my mouth and hear what they were saying about what they were doing to the human population.